In 1905, San Francisco stood as the crown jewel of the American West, a city of 400,000 souls, Victorian mansions climbing impossible hills, cable cars rattling through streets alive with ambition and dreams. Through recently discovered photographs and film footage, enhanced and reconstructed by artificial intelligence, we can now walk those streets again, see the faces of people who had no idea they were living in the final chapter of their city's first life. This is a meditation on impermanence, on how quickly everything we build can vanish, and how technology now allows us to resurrect, if only for a moment, worlds that were swallowed by time and fire. If you enjoyed this story, leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There is a photograph taken in 1905, somewhere along Market Street in San Francisco. In it, you can see a woman crossing the road. She wears a long dark dress, her face partially hidden beneath the wide brim of her hat. She is moving with purpose, perhaps late for an appointment, perhaps simply navigating the chaos of a city that never seemed to sleep. Behind her, cable cars climb the impossible hills. Horse-drawn carriages share the cobblestones with the first automobiles, those strange mechanical beasts that coughed and sputtered their way into a new century. The woman does not know she is being photographed. She does not know that over 100 years later, artificial intelligence would reconstruct her image, sharpen the details of her face, and allow strangers from another age to wonder who she was, where she was going, and whether she survived what was coming. She had less than a year to live in the city she knew. San Francisco in 1905 was not just a city. It was a declaration. Rising from the fog-wrapped hills of Northern California, it stood as proof that the American West had been conquered, civilized, and transformed into something magnificent. They called it the Paris of the Pacific, and the comparison was not entirely flattery. 400,000 souls called this place home. Victorian mansions climbed the steep slopes of Nob Hill, their painted facades bright against the grey morning mist. The Ferry Building's clock tower marked the hours for a population in constant motion. Chinatown sprawled through narrow alleys where the scent of incense mixed with the smoke of cooking fires, a world within a world, mysterious to outsiders but home to tens of thousands. The Barbary Coast offered darker pleasures, saloons and dance halls where fortunes were won and lost before dawn. This was a city of extremes, of impossible wealth and desperate poverty, of immigrants from every corner of the earth who had come seeking something better than whatever they had left behind. The technology that now allows us to see this world with new clarity would have seemed like pure magic to those who lived in it. Artificial intelligence has taken the surviving photographs, the scratched and faded images captured by cameras of the era, and breathed new life into them. Details emerge that were always there but hidden by the limitations of old film and aging paper. Faces become individuals rather than anonymous shapes in a crowd. The texture of fabric, the pattern of brickwork, the weathered wood of a storefront sign, all of it sharpens into focus as if a fog has lifted from history itself. We can now walk through Market Street as it existed in 1905 and see it with a clarity its own residents might have envied. But this gift of sight comes with a weight, because we know what they did not. At the time these photographs were taken, San Francisco was building itself bigger and bolder with each passing month. The city had survived epidemics, economic crashes, and the violent growing pains of the gold rush era. It had emerged from each challenge stronger than before. The residents had every reason to believe their city was permanent, that the grand hotels and ornate theaters and the new city hall with its magnificent dome would stand for centuries. Architects were planning even grander projects. Businessmen were investing fortunes in real estate. Families were raising children who would inherit this gleaming metropolis on the bay. The future seemed limitless. Beneath their feet, the earth was preparing to disagree. The San Andreas Fault runs like a scar along the California coast, a boundary where two massive tectonic plates grind against each other in an endless slow-motion collision. In 1905, no one fully understood what this meant. Seismology was in its infancy. The science that would eventually explain earthquakes was still being born. People knew the ground sometimes shook in California. They had felt minor tremors over the years, but few imagined the scale of violence the fault was capable of unleashing. The energy had been building for decades, perhaps centuries. The rocks were locked in a grip that grew tighter with each passing year. Something had to give. The photographs from 1905 capture a city at the peak of its confidence. There is a famous film, shot by a camera mounted on the front of a cable car as it traveled down Market Street, that has survived the century. In it, you can see the chaos and vitality of urban life in that era. Pedestrians crossed the streets seemingly at random, dodging vehicles, darting between horses. Automobiles weave through traffic with a recklessness that suggests the rules of the road had not yet been written. Everyone is in motion. The city pulses with energy, with ambition, with the absolute certainty that tomorrow will be better than today. Artificial intelligence has stabilized this footage, removed the flicker and grain, and enhanced the resolution until individual faces become recognizable. There is a man in a bowler hat who steps off the curb without looking, narrowly avoiding a collision. There is a young boy who stops to stare directly at the camera, perhaps the first time he has ever seen such a device. There are women carrying packages from the department stores that line the street, their arms full of purchases that would soon turn to ash. Each of them is a life, a story, a collection of hopes and fears and daily concerns that seemed so important at the time. None of them know they are being preserved for eternity. None of them know that the world they are walking through has already begun its countdown to oblivion. The grand buildings that lined Market Street represented the best of Victorian and Edwardian architecture. The Palace Hotel was considered one of the finest in the world, 7 stories of elegance where royalty and magnates slept beneath crystal chandeliers. The Cole Building rose 16 stories into the sky, one of the tallest structures west of Chicago, a monument to the power of the press and the confidence of its age. City Hall, completed just a few years earlier at a cost of millions, featured a dome modeled after St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. These were not temporary structures. They were built to last forever. Forever, as it turned out, meant approximately 18 months. The social fabric of San Francisco in 1905 was as complex as any modern city. The wealthy elite of Nob Hill lived in mansions staffed by servants, throwing parties that were reported in newspapers across the country. Their fortunes came from railroads and silver mines and the industries that had transformed the West. Below them, a vast middle class of merchants and professionals and skilled workers kept the city running. Below them still, the working poor crowded into tenements and boarding houses, laboring in factories and on the docks for wages that barely covered rent and food. And at the bottom, invisible to polite society, were those who had fallen through every safety net, the homeless and the addicted and the desperate, living in the shadows of the Barbary Coast. The Chinese community occupied a unique and precarious position. Chinatown was the largest Chinese settlement outside of Asia, home to an estimated 25,000 residents. It was a self-contained world with its own merchants, its own temples, its own social hierarchy. Outsiders viewed it with a mixture of fascination and fear, spreading rumors about opium dens and criminal tongs while remaining ignorant of the vibrant culture that flourished behind those cramped facades. The Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 had frozen immigration, trapping a population that could not grow through legal means. Many of the residents in 1905 were aging men who had come as young laborers and now faced old age in a land that did not want them. They could not return home with honor. They could not bring families from China. They existed in a kind of suspended animation, building businesses and forming communities while the larger society pretended they did not exist. The technology of the era was poised at a fascinating threshold. Electric lights had begun to replace gas lamps along the main streets, transforming the night into something almost like day. Telephones connected businesses and the wealthy, though most homes still communicated through letters and messengers. The automobile was transitioning from curiosity to practical transportation, though horses remained the backbone of urban logistics. Photography had become cheap enough that ordinary families could afford portraits, preserving faces that would otherwise have been lost to time. Motion picture cameras captured scenes of street life that would prove invaluable to future historians trying to understand a world that no longer existed. These technological advances are what allow artificial intelligence to work its modern magic. The photographs and films left behind contain information that the original viewers could not extract. The patterns of light and shadow, the subtle gradations of tone, the details hidden in the grain of the film, all of this can now be processed by algorithms that detect and enhance what human eyes might miss. When AI reconstructs a face from a blurry 1905 photograph, it is not inventing features from nothing. It is revealing what was always there, locked in the chemical traces left by light on glass plates over a century ago. The technology is not resurrection. It is more like archaeology, carefully brushing away the dust of years to reveal what lies beneath. What lies beneath, in San Francisco's case, is a city more alive than we might have imagined. The AI-enhanced images show people who look remarkably like us. Remove the period clothing and they could be walking down any modern street. Their faces show the same range of emotions we experience today, the same fatigue and hope and distraction and determination. A man on Market Street has the expression of someone late for work, checking his pocket watch with the universal anxiety of those who fear they have disappointed someone. A young woman laughs at something outside the frame, her joy frozen in silver and revived by silicon. Children play in the streets with the same reckless energy children have always had, oblivious to the traffic that their parents watch with nervous eyes. The more clearly we see them, the harder it becomes to maintain emotional distance. These were real people with real lives. They had names we will never know and dreams we can only imagine. The woman in the dark dress crossing Market Street might have been going to meet her husband for lunch, or shopping for fabric to make a new dress, or visiting a sick friend in one of the hospitals south of the slot. The man in the bowler hat might have been a clerk heading to his office, mentally reviewing the accounts he would spend the day reconciling. The boy staring at the camera might have grown up to fight in the First World War, or die in the earthquake that was coming, or live to a ripe old age and tell his grandchildren about the day he saw a strange device on wheels rolling down the street. We will never know. The earthquake and fire that followed erased not just buildings but records. Birth certificates, business documents, photographs, letters, the paper trail that allows historians to reconstruct lives, much of it burned in the flames that consumed the city. Some of the people in these images became statistics in the official death toll, a number that remains disputed to this day. Some escaped and rebuilt their lives elsewhere. Some stayed and helped construct a new San Francisco from the ashes of the old. Their individual stories, for the most part, have been lost. What remains are these fragments. These frozen moments captured by cameras that the photographers surely thought were recording ordinary days, routine scenes of urban life barely worth remembering. No one preserves footage of catastrophe before the catastrophe occurs. What we have instead is the last act of a play whose final scene no one wanted to film. The photographs of 1905 San Francisco are precious precisely because they show life continuing in its normal patterns, unaware that normal was about to end. The morning of April 18, 1906, arrived without warning. At 5:12 a.m., most of the city was still asleep. The first shock lasted approximately 45 seconds, though to those who experienced it, time seemed to stretch and compress in impossible ways. The ground moved in waves, as if the solid earth had become liquid. Buildings designed for vertical loads discovered they had no defense against horizontal forces. Chimneys fell. Walls cracked. Facades peeled away from structures, raining brick and stone onto the streets below. In less than a minute, the city that had taken half a century to build began to come apart. But the earthquake was only the beginning. Broken gas mains leaked fuel into rubble. Overturned stoves ignited wooden debris. Within hours, fires were burning in dozens of locations across the city. The water mains had ruptured in the same violence that broke the buildings, leaving firefighters with empty hoses and full desperation. The flames spread unchecked, jumping from block to block, consuming everything in their path. The fire department, realizing they could not stop the inferno with water, resorted to dynamite, trying to create firebreaks by demolishing buildings in the path of the flames. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes the explosions only spread the fire further. For 3 days, San Francisco burned. The grand hotels became furnaces. The department stores melted into twisted steel and ash. City Hall's magnificent dome collapsed into its own basement. Chinatown vanished so completely that some officials briefly considered not allowing it to be rebuilt, hoping to relocate its residents to less valuable land. Nob Hill's mansions burned with the same indifference as the tenements south of Market Street. Fire does not discriminate by wealth or status. Everything burns at the same temperature. When the flames finally exhausted themselves, approximately 3,000 people were dead. Some estimates place the number much higher. Over half the city's population, more than 200,000 people, were homeless. 28,000 buildings had been destroyed. The damage, in today's dollars, would exceed $10 billion. The city that the woman in the dark dress had crossed Market Street to navigate no longer existed. The cable cars she dodged were twisted metal. The stores she passed were piles of brick. The future she might have imagined, whatever it was, had been erased along with everything else. The AI reconstructions allow us to see that lost world with painful clarity. We can zoom in on faces that no longer have names, examine buildings that no longer have addresses, walk virtually through streets that no longer follow the same paths. It is a kind of time travel, but time travel without the power to warn or save. We are witnesses to a world that does not know we are watching, separated by technology and time from offering any help at all. Some have asked whether there is something voyeuristic about this reconstruction. Whether we are intruding on lives that expected privacy, using technology that would have seemed impossible to extract details that were never meant for our eyes. It is a fair question. The people in these photographs did not consent to being studied by artificial intelligence. They did not imagine their faces would be sharpened by algorithms and displayed on screens around the world. They were simply living their lives, walking to work, shopping for groceries, going about the business of being human in a particular place at a particular time. But perhaps there is value in that intrusion. Perhaps the greatest tribute we can pay to those who lived and died in San Francisco 1905 is to look at them clearly, to see them as individuals rather than anonymous crowds, to acknowledge that they were as real and complex and deserving of remembrance as anyone alive today. The technology that reconstructs their images also reconstructs, in some small way, their humanity. They become people rather than history, faces rather than statistics, lives rather than data points. The city that rose from the ashes of 1906 was different in countless ways from the one that fell. The new San Francisco was built with better engineering, stricter building codes, a clearer understanding of seismic risk. It grew even larger and more prosperous than before, eventually becoming the technology capital that gave birth to the very artificial intelligence that now resurrects its past. The trauma of the earthquake became part of the city's identity, a founding myth of resilience and renewal that still shapes how San Franciscans think about themselves. But something was also lost that could never be rebuilt. The San Francisco of 1905 was a particular combination of architecture and population and social dynamics that would never exist again. The ornate Victorian buildings that survived the fire and the demolitions that followed became precious remnants of another age, treasured precisely because so many of their siblings had been destroyed. The Chinese community that rebuilt in the same location designed new buildings that deliberately looked more Chinese than the ones they replaced, understanding that tourists expected exoticism and that survival sometimes means performing the identity others expect. The city that emerged from the ashes was not a continuation of the old city but something new, shaped by catastrophe into a different form. The photographs remain. The AI reconstructions sharpen them into focus. And we are left to contemplate what it means that we can now see so clearly a world that no longer exists. The technology that allows this reconstruction did not exist even a decade ago. A decade from now, it will doubtless be even more powerful, revealing details we cannot currently imagine. Perhaps someday we will be able to walk virtually through a perfect recreation of 1905 San Francisco, experiencing the sights and sounds and even the smells of a city that vanished in flame over a century ago. But no matter how perfect the reconstruction, it will always be a ghost. A beautiful, detailed, haunting ghost, but a ghost nonetheless. The woman crossing Market Street will never complete her journey. The man in the bowler hat will never arrive at his destination. The boy staring at the camera will never grow up, at least not in any way we can follow. They are frozen in time, preserved by chemicals and enhanced by algorithms, but beyond our reach in every way that matters. Stories like this remind us of something we prefer to forget. That the world we live in is not permanent. That the cities we build and the lives we construct can be erased in moments by forces beyond our control. That future generations may look back at our photographs with the same mixture of fascination and sorrow, enhanced by technologies we cannot imagine, wondering who we were and what we hoped for and whether we knew what was coming. If this glimpse into a vanished world has moved you, if you found yourself wondering about the lives behind those reconstructed faces, share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to continue exploring the mysteries that history has hidden from us, subscribe to this channel. Because every photograph tells a story. And some stories deserve to be remembered. San Francisco 1905. A city that thought it would last forever. A moment frozen in time, waiting for us to look closely enough to see it clearly. And a reminder, perhaps, to appreciate the fragile beauty of everything we have, before it too becomes a ghost enhanced by technologies we cannot yet imagine.